Good deal. We have a quorum.
We do.
Outstanding. Okay, we'll pop up first agenda item, call to order. Welcome everybody to Wednesday, September 20th, 2023 electronic meeting of the Ann Arbor Advisory Committee. It's been held remotely. We intend to conduct a meeting just like in person. Please be patient with technical issues. Public comment will be via phone only. To speak during any public comment, call the phone number, the 887 phone number or the 888 number, enter in the meeting number 530745. This information available in the public agenda and in the public notice section of the website.
Okay, I'll go ahead with the roll call. Member Perry, where are you participating from? Yeah. You could do charades.
I guess I've got too many screens going here. Mark Perry, present remotely, Scioto Township.
Member Ferris?
I am here and in Ann Arbor.
Member Faulkner?
Here, Ann Arbor.
Member Hall?
Present, Ann Arbor.
And Member Briggs?
Here in Ann Arbor.
All right, we have a quorum, Mr. Chair. Be it noted that Member Harshberger is here, but as an ex officio, doesn't need to say where he's at, but he looks like he's in his office.
Outstanding. The first item up is approval of the agenda. Folks look over the agenda and see if there's any additions or things left that we need to talk about.
I don't want to add anything as far as the agricultural decision, but there has been some requests from people at the airport to talk about geese. I don't know if that ties into the ag or not.
Probably doesn't tie next to that issue. We could, do we think, well, I guess in that, do we think we should talk about, I guess, more wildlife mitigation kind of things on this, or we could put it off a new agenda item for the next? I mean, I'm open to whatever we feel like.
Next time is fine with me.
Okay. So we'll make sure to bring that up when we do next agenda items towards the end too. Excellent. Okay, so look for a motion to approve the agenda as it stands.
Wait a minute, let's pause up here a moment. Wildlife mitigation, we are getting into hunting season, and which is much more than geese. There's deer and other animals on the airport. As new business, if it's appropriate and there's enough support, I would want to add as new business wildlife.
On tonight's agenda, Mark?
Yes.
Yeah, I think, yeah, if we get a motion for that to be added, I guess that's a motion, Mark. If there's a second.
Looking for a second to amend the agenda, approve the agenda as amended by adding a new item of business in tonight's meeting for wildlife.
Now second, and then we'll just do a vote. All in favor of that approved agenda item, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Excellent. In new business, right? So we're going to have it, Matt. Sound good?
Yeah, I've just added it to my agenda.
Good deal. Okay, next up is approval of minutes from the last meeting. I was just pulling up, I can't remember the date. Yeah, thank you. Any discussion, any changes?
Motion to approve as presented.
For a second. I second. All in favor of approval of the minutes as they are, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Fine.
No opposed? Excellent. Minutes approved. Okay, next part, we have an opportunity for persons to speak up to 3 minutes in the public comment section. Phone number, the 88 or the 877 or the 888 number, and then the meeting numbers I spoke before, 730-745-4665. Matt will pick the caller based if you have raised your hand, which you can, and he'll call out by the last 3 digits of your phone number. In order to electronically raise your hand, should be able to push *9 on your phone, and that'll show up. You will hear an audible announcement that the host is allowing you to speak. When speaking, please move to a quiet area and mute your television or background noise so it's easier for us to hear. Also, right before you speak, state your name and the address at the beginning of your comments.
Okay, we got caller with the last 3 digits, 340. You can go ahead and unmute your phone.
Good evening. This is David McCullough, member of Broadview Farms LLC. I'm also here with my my dad George and my brother Nathan, and our farm address here is 4100 Stone School Road, and that's Ann Arbor, Michigan 48108. We just wanted to, reiterate what we did at the last meeting, that we would like to have an open discussion with the board if possible, in regards to continuing to farm inside the airport grounds. We just, want to talk about different options and ways that we could help mitigate wildlife if possible, and incorporate any tillage practices and or deer repellents, different ways that we could help the airport mitigate those wildlife concerns.
This is George McCullough. We've been on the farm over there for, 20-some years now, and had a great working relationship with the airport. And we have always been on the airport to make money farming. And but if we're going to be emphasizing and controlling wildlife, there are lots of things that we can do to help ourselves out and to help the airport out. And the airport could continue to have the rental income from us in that regard, and we could continue to pay Pittsfield property taxes on the airport if we continue our lease arrangement with the city. It's certainly something that the board might want to consider. We have some great ideas. Deer damage is a big issue in Washington County, and there's a lot of things we can do to help control the deer and the geese problem. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, and we appreciate the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Other members, any other guests that would like to speak? Please raise your hand. Okay, Mr. Chair, no one else has indicated they'd like to speak at the initial public comment section.
Thank you, sir. Okay, next coming up is Correspondence B1, which is airport operations through July 2023.
Excuse me. Yeah, so we've got June and July in the books now. We have the numbers back. They were solid months for the summer, not as high as last year, but last year obviously was a significant increase in operations than we had. So down a little bit from last year, year to date, about just under 4% less activity this year for the first 7 months of the year compared to last year for the first 7 months of the year. But if you look at some of the historical numbers, you see the June and July were pretty consistent with what we'd expect during the summer. So so far the numbers are still a lot of activity at the airport, but less activity than last year. Any questions on the operations numbers? Okay, I'll move to the fuel usage. This also is through the month of July. Again, June and July June was in the ballpark. July was a little lower than what we would normally see. For the year so far, We are down about 6%, a little over 6%, compared to last year's numbers. Again, these normally don't correlate specifically with operations, but, you know, obviously if you're going to have lower operations, less fuel sales, you know, can be expected. But, again, really nothing significant there to report on it. Any questions on the fuel usage numbers? Go ahead, Mark.
Matt, on the revenue side of the P&L, hangar rental income and concessionaire income is there, but also the fuel flowage fee.
Yeah.
Since we're down about 6% on the month, how is our budget, our forecasted revenue relative to the budget? Are we okay? Do you have enough reserve? Because this is an enterprise fund department, and
Yeah, it is. And just to give you an idea of scope, I mean, we're in good shape. So we budget, when we put our budget together, we budget on 300,000 gallons of sale per year, which generates $27,000 of revenue. So it's small. It's really a small portion of our budget. You know, our budget is around $1 million, so that revenue is only about a little over 2%, 2.5% of our annual revenue. So being down a little bit from last year. Now, we didn't hit our target last year, either, but you know, so it's going to be a few $1,000s impact. So not terribly significant.
okay, thank you.
Yep. Other questions on the fuel usage? Okay, go to the next item, which is the hangar occupancy. That's the easy one. Seems to be at 100%. You'll see in July and August, our waiting list has grown a little bit. So we're up to currently 41 people on the waiting list, and haven't moved a hangar since May, I think was the last one that a new hangar that we've leased up. So it's been a bit. So again, you know, good for the airport, but you know, it's always frustrating when I have to, you know, tell people that we're out 24 to 30 months on hangar space. So any questions on the occupancy report? Okay, that's all I have under correspondence tonight. I will make the smooth transition into the airport manager's report then. First item is the environmental assessment. So the environmental assessment itself, the document is done. The review has been pretty much complete by the FAA. Where we're at right now, the next step is what they call a finding of no significant impact document. That is what the EA has determined. So that document, which is still, it's a 14-page document, that has been drafted by the consultants and reviewed, and it's been sent over to the FAA for review. So how long it'll take them to review that is unknown, because I never want to predict FAA times, because I haven't got one right in 15 years. But yeah, so we're pretty close. It wouldn't surprise me, you know, in the next 30 to 60 days to have the FONSI completed and signed and ready to go. So we're close. We're not there yet, but we're closest we've ever been. We're focusing on the FONSI as opposed to the EA, which is a positive step. We haven't gotten to that point yet. So questions on the EA before I move on to other items? Okay. Just a couple of items to note. The Air Traffic Control Tower is hosting their annual Runway Safety Action Team meeting. That's going to be Wednesday, October 11th from 2 to 4, and it's held at the lower level conference room at the terminal building. Like last year, it is going to be a hybrid meeting, and so if people aren't comfortable or don't want to participate in person, they'll be able to participate via Zoom. This is a ATC event, so they'll be sending out more information and notices to airport tenants and regarding the Zoom link and those type of things. We've we've gone ahead and put the information in our billing notices and announced it tonight. So again, it's a good opportunity to, talk safety issues with the tower and the tower to kind of share what they're seeing and what their emphasis are as they move forward. Just a follow up to a couple of items I reported on last week. The city has completed the Wi-Fi in the terminal building. So we do have new public Wi-Fi in the terminal building, and there is much better service signal strength in the basement. They've actually put some heads in the basement, so we've got pretty good coverage in the building now. It is available to the public. We had been talking about a new additional recycled dumpster in the Northwest T hangars. That's been delivered and is installed for recycling. It's next to the waste dumpster at the end of Kilo Row, on the south end of Kilo Row. We also talked about, we had done the concrete repairs to the section of Alpha earlier this summer, and now that the concrete is cured long enough, we've gone ahead and applied the pavement markings to that section. So those are all up to speed. Was actually attended the Michigan Association of Airport Executives Conference. It's a state airport managers conference last week. Good opportunity to continue to pick up information, see what other airports are doing, what issues they're facing, and it's a good time spent there, and picked up a number of things. Again, just the opportunity to sit in a roundtable meeting with other GA airports and discuss issues that they're facing, how we deal with that, what we're dealing with, those type of things is a positive opportunity. Earlier this week on Monday, we provided a tour of the airport of city council members. We had a county commissioner and state representative there as well. This was put together through the city administrator's office. And so we had an opportunity just to, help continue and expand the knowledge base for our elected officials of the airport, what the airport's about, gave them a tour of the tower, gave them a tour of the facility. We talked about the runway extension project, kind of gave them a feel for some of the issues that are out there. And then had a few tenants come in and just chat with the group and just kind of share their experiences at the airport, what they use the airport for, how they use it. I think Councilmember Briggs was there, which we appreciate her participation. And, I thought it was a good event. It lasted the better part of 3 hours. So it was, I think, a good event for the airport. And anytime we can educate anyone but elected officials about the airport, I think is a positive impact. So for everybody involved. Last item I have is just the FAA, which manages the weather stations at the airport, the ASOS and the SAWS, which are just south of the runway, kind of in the just south of in the northeast area of the runway. They're going to be doing some improvements to their access starting in October. They're going to be graveling some areas to give them a more all-weather access. In the spring, they have a tough time getting trucks out to that area. They've tried it at one time before and went over some of the worst part they took the shortest route, which is some of the worst part of the airport grounds, muck soils and those things. And met with our staff to look at using some of the old taxiways, the old runways, which are already kind of established, to use them as a route to get out to the equipment. So if you see some work out there in the second, third week of October, it'll be the FAA working on those areas just to improve their access a little bit.
Matt,
Yeah.
The FAA weather station facility equipment that's on the airport, does that equipment gather the weather and not just feeds it out to the aviation community, but also local weather stations, news stations, and other media? Is that still the primary weather station that reports Ann Arbor's weather?
It is, yeah. They still, weather stations, meteorologists, their biggest source of information is aviation weather stations. If it's federal systems, state systems, but yeah, it was one of the things we discussed at the conference was the state is updating the AWAS systems, which is automated weather observation systems, a little different than some of the other systems, but the state has a number of those at airports throughout Michigan. Ours are federal, so they're managed by I think it's NOAA actually manages them. Yeah, information gets put into a central database and is available to weather stations, and those databases are used also. The systems themselves don't record historical information, but they're downloaded, and services like Weather Underground and those type of things are useful because they can pull data. You can search data, all sorts of different data for events and times and dates and those type of things. So, but yeah, it is one of the primary sources for weather service data.
In a kind of an indirectly related topic, there is a service, web-based service, as we pretty much all use, called ATC Live, where you can go to the website. If you want to click on Ann Arbor, you can listen to the tower. And going back to your Wi-Fi report, the reason that the ATC Live equipment wasn't stationed at the airport is because we didn't have Wi-Fi at the time. We had to use Solo or some other means. Now that the airport has Wi-Fi and it's open to the public, it may be worth having the conversation of bringing that equipment back onto the airport. For a while, it was over at the old terminal, the EAA office. Then we moved it over to U of M, Michigan Flyers, and now it's off-site over in Avis Farms. And weather, you can pick up weather on ATC Live as addition to the tower and to the ground. That can be, Matt, it can be used by your department for the first responders as well.
Okay, we'll have to learn a little more about that then, Mark. I was familiar with obviously with ATC Live, but just, web-based systems, but not that we had, some equipment or that there was some local equipment related to that. So I'll maybe chat more with you so I can get a better understanding of it.
Okay.
I appreciate that too, Mark. Thank you.
And just a correction, the name is Live ATC.
Live
Oh, yeah, Live. Sorry about that. Dyslexic.
Have another cup of coffee, you'll be all set.
Yep.
That's all I have under my report, unless there's any questions.
Yeah, I have a question, Matt. I'd like to hear you talk more about your impressions of the Airport Managers Conference. Maybe this isn't the right forum, but what are they all concerned about these days?
There's a number of things, and we're kind of a weird airport. So we have, this conference includes commercial services airports like, Detroit Metro and Grand Rapids and those type of things. Then GA airports, but a lot of the airports that are there are smaller much smaller than we are. So they don't have towers, so I go back and forth sometimes between the commercial services airports and the GA stuff, just based on what it is. But there's a few things that are coming out that they're working on. There's a lot of stuff in this meeting was about, advancements in technology, drones, advanced air mobility stuff, just a lot where that aspect is going, and how to prepare for it, we talked a lot about sustainability. We talked about electric aircraft and what are going to be the needs for those. as I mentioned, there was different stuff on weather systems and, but I always find the roundtables when you can sit down with your peers and just start discussing subjects and topics. And probably the biggest topic out there right now is obstruction clearances. A lot of airports are dealing with, now that MDOT has moved to this drone system, which is a wonderful system, they can really identify trees that are protruding through your obstacle clearance surface very well. And that's not so bad when it's on your property because you can take care of that relatively easy. But when it's off your property, it becomes quite a pain to work through that process. And if you don't address it, then you have potential for displaced thresholds and those type of things. So for us, we're in pretty good shape with that. We still have a handful of trees that are off our airport property that we're trying to work on. But it's very minor compared to what we had, and we had done a pretty decent job of getting stuff cleaned out. So every obstruction on airport property has been addressed, and we've got about 6 or 7 outside of airport property that we're talking with property owners on. But yeah, I mean, without getting into a lot of the detail and boring everybody here, it's a good opportunity. I will note that next year they're actually the state conference is going to be in Ypsilanti at the Eagle Crest Resort or Golf Club, or I'm not sure what the appropriate term is for that. So, if any of the members are interested in participating during a day or for a couple of days, they reduced the length of the conference this year. It's basically a 3.5-day conference. But it's good opportunity to see what's out there. Some of the stuff the FAA is focusing on. I mean, one of the things that came up, and I'll talk about this a little later in new business, is airport rules and regulations. And with the high demand for general aviation, getting more aggressive. If the FAA comes in and decides they want to do an inspection of your airport, making sure that the aircraft in your hangars are can fly, that they're airworthy. That's an issue. That's an issue for some of our hangars and some of our old-time aircraft, and so those are different things that they're looking at. Again, the FAA, like all airports, they want to see the aircraft that are on the field. They want to see aircraft that are flying, especially when there's waiting lists and those things. So that's going to be an emphasis that they deal with as well as they continue to do inspections at airports and those things. So it's, again, just to get a feel, there's a lot of stuff going on with the funding that's out there right now. There's still so many different funding sources with all this infrastructure money that's been approved over the last year, and just how the FAA is they're dumping a lot of money into the FAA, and how the FAA is trying to allocate that out and try to get rules established on what things are eligible. So there's a lot of discussion about that, but it does give airports, including ours, some opportunity for some additional funding sources that may not have been there in the past. So I'll end it at that, and if you have more, you can give me a call.
Thanks a lot.
Matt, is MDOT going to do that Airport 101 kind of thing they did with managers and stuff back a few years ago?
Yeah, they continue to do that. Trying to think when the next one is. I can get that information and email it out to the membership. I know you participated in that a few years ago, and again, I think it's a 1-day. Was it a 1 or 2-day event?
It was. Yeah, I think it might have been 1 or I think maybe 2, but it depended. But it went through, and again, it was the same as Matt said. It was different than the conference, I'm sure, but it was geared towards having a lot of the airport managers there and just talk about their issues. And the big things, of course, would always come up with funding and mitigation of certain kind of issues that airports run into. But it wasn't attended by DTW and those kind of necessarily. It was mostly the smaller airports.
Yeah, and it's really geared towards smaller airports and airport advisory committee members and those type of things that just want to get a better understanding, a better overall understanding of what it what it takes to run an airport, the various tons of regulations that airports deal with, funding issues for airports, those type of things. So it's a good program that the state has put together. All right, that's all I have under my report, then, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, sir. Next up is committee reports. Chief, anything from Pittsfield?
I know that we typically talk about noise abatement and whatnot under old business, so I'll save. I have a comment and a question regarding an update on all of that, but otherwise, nothing new.
Outstanding. Thank you, sir. The next discovery area, and of course, Greg is always behind. As I said, most of the discovery area large is getting the nonprofit group that actually Mark and Chris Gordon had set up a long time ago and been in places to get some of that rolling again and in place. And so they've helped me out a lot with getting that going. And then also just recently started talking to Matt more about, we had some plans about the ramp area when you walk into the terminal building, probably, heck, that might be 2 or 3 years ago. But we've done some initial stuff there and how that could fit in to maybe some initial stuff at this discovery area, which is more the covered area and the benches at the very beginning, if you remember some of the diagrams. So to see some things that we might have, talk about more probably next year, really, but just see planning, pulling that stuff together and start getting at least one phase of the process going. Any questions on that? Okay. So next up on unfinished business, and E1 is noise concerns, and the one item on there, the voluntary abatement brochure.
Yeah, my target was to have the draft brochure back for consideration by the committee at this meeting, and unfortunately, I was not able to get that done. I apologize for that, but I will definitely have that for the next meeting. So, Chief, I know you had some stuff you want to chat about.
Yes. So just 2 things, actually. I know that Mark had actually sent out a quick email after Labor Day, and I want to just kind of reiterate kind of what he had mentioned, that we had no complaints regarding a holiday air training, traffic noise or touch and goes or pattern traffic or whatever. If there were any, I didn't receive any complaints. So I think the effort that the committee has been pushing to on major holidays, recommend strongly to their training pilots, I believe it was, to not do that type of activity on major holidays to allow residents the opportunity to enjoy the holiday, seems to be working. So I agree with Mark's comments during that email that he had sent out, and it seems to be working, and we greatly appreciate that. On the other hand, I do have a question. So I just received, I haven't had any complaints in particular since that time, our last meeting, that we didn't discuss already prior to now. I was informed of a Nextdoor thread of comments from neighbors from Stonebridge, and it's more of a question I had because there was concern brought up that there was a third, I guess, flight training school that may have been approved or is working under Michigan Flyers, or there's a new addition that is been adding traffic to airport traffic, so training traffic. And I don't know if you can comment on that or advise if there's something new going on or additional flights that are taking place, training flights that I need to advise the residents of.
No, there's no new flight schools or anything like that that have gotten approval or asked for approval at the airport. So I'm not aware of any new ones. Mark, I don't know if they're thinking with the new FBO opening up, Ace Aviation Center, though he's not doing any flight operations at this flight school at this point. So maybe they're thinking that was tied in. Fred, you don't have anything different going on at Flyers, do you?
No, same old thing. So that's that's all news to me. I got nothing to illuminate you on that.
Yeah, so I'm basically what we've got right now, Matt, is Solo Aviation, Michigan Flyers. Melanie could tell us for sure, but I don't think that Ann Arbor Flyers are really doing any flight training anymore. So, you know, while Aviation Center under Mark Royson did have a flight school, they have not been flying. Of course, the building was vacant since March, and Aaron has not applied for starting up, though we do expect him to, that was one of the expectations with his lease. So maybe people are thinking he hasn't started anything up, but maybe people are talking about, hey, they've got a new FBO, new flight school, that type of thing. So,
Gotcha.
Matt, do you know if he's got a rental fleet of any kind?
he does not yet. Right now, the services he's providing are just fueling and aircraft repair.
Okay.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
There is one other possibility, Matt.
Yeah.
Planning or
Either Matt.
and that is that we have to remember that a general aviation airport that accepts federal, state, and local funding is an open transportation facility that Matt has no control over who comes and goes. So, you know, you can have transient, you can have student pilots from Willow, from Flint, Brighton, you know, wherever. They can come here and do it, and we have no say over it. Just like a freeway, just like a state trunk line.
Yeah.
You just can't discriminate on your users.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good point, Mark. I mean, you could have, Crosswinds up in Howell, I think, is a pretty busy training facility, and I think there's a couple over at Willow Run, but nothing that's originating out of Ann Arbor, Matt. And I haven't heard of any of those schools, coming in and doing touch and goes. I mean, at Willow Run, I would think, their traffic levels are lower than ours typically, and they've got a tower, so I don't know, other than maybe not having to deal with the Detroit airspace. I'm not sure why they'd come over, but that's a possibility, Mark. It's a good point to raise, but nothing that's originating or initiating out of Ann Arbor.
Is there any data that you would know of, or have you seen anything that would indicate there has been an increase in train traffic?
The numbers we get are just operations, so it wouldn't indicate if it was training or not. You may want to give Chadwick, the tower manager, he's back and forth. He's still out sometime on paternity leave, but he is back in the office. Maybe you want to reach out to the tower to see if what they're seeing, or if they're seeing, new activity from flight schools or flight training. Because frequently for flight trainings, they'll be able to tell if it's a new, if it's somebody in flight training or not. But I haven't heard anything.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. And just anecdotally, the traffic that I hear on the radio when I'm flying, there's nothing remarkable at all. I'm curious though, Matt, can you give me any leads? I'll try to look up that next door thread. I'd be really reluctant to contribute to it, but I'm very curious about what rumors might be going around.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Fred. I will send you the information that I can get and let you follow up on that.
Thanks.
Absolutely. And thank everybody for your input and whatever information you can provide.
Matt, Harshberger, there is a FAA public site that you can go to where the FAA maintains as a warehouse all of its flight and operations related data by airport, and you can filter on it to get, say, just Ann Arbor, and it's broken down between flight operations of 121.35, which is cargo, general aviation, transient, and so forth. And there may be some clues, but as Matt said, the tower doesn't get granular as to whether this is a training flight other than transient or general aviation, transient meaning local or from a distance, and the general aviation or the local is from our airport. You know, other than that, they get granular to the type, but not to the specific type that you're looking for.
Gotcha.
Are we talking about ATADs?
I think that's the name of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd be happy to share the link with you, Matt. Mark said it's an open site. If you just search ATADS and FAA, it's Air Traffic Activity Data System, I think is what it stands for. That's actually where I pull our operational numbers out for our monthly report. But as Mark said, it does break it down if it's, you know, different parts, if it's civilian or military. But generally what you're going to see for Ann Arbor is a big old chunk of local. And that would include
Training.
pretty much everything that's, you know, that's local. So that's going to include all the regular flight training and those type of things. You could probably maybe do a comparison of that, you know, just the local data, but it's not broken down any more than that.
Would the tower be able to provide just a general assessment on touch and goes or flight training, that they would just say, yeah, we've seen an increase versus an exact number or any data?
I think that's what you'd get from them as opposed to an exact number is, yeah, we've seen a lot more, and they, you know, they know who the locals are. I mean, they know all of the flyers' tail numbers probably by heart.
Absolutely.
And they know most of the solo aviations by heart. You know, so if they're seeing flight training from somebody else, you know, that may jump out to them if they're seeing a new aircraft or a couple of different aircrafts doing flight training on the field. I'm not aware that they do any specific tracking on that. I know there's no reporting into the database on flight training. My guess is that they probably wouldn't delineate flight training from other traffic coming and going. But again, you may just want to reach out. At least we're getting they may say, no, we haven't seen anything, or, you know, we have noticed some different aircraft doing flight training that we haven't seen here in the past or something.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that, and you know, they may have some reasons to be less than forthcoming about their information, but if you could get the controllers to just talk about their impressions of the traffic, it's like Matt said, they know all of us.
Yeah.
You know, if they are seeing somebody new 5 times a week, they would notice. I think at least a few of the old hands up there would probably tell you in detail what you want to know if you could get them to talk.
Yeah.
Come to the RSAT meeting on the 11th, and they typically have the tower manager and a couple of supervisors and maybe a controller or two there at that meeting.
I may do that. I appreciate that. So thank you, everybody, for your information, and I'll keep digging into it. And at our next meeting, I can kind of report what I found out.
Great.
Thank you.
Chief, I'll just add one thing. I hate to keep beating this one, but because I watch next door on a couple of those for airport things all the time just to see and one big one is with 3 home games in a row. There was a whole nother thread about the aircraft that were around for game day and the noise created by the banner traffic and whatnot. I noticed a huge one on that the other day. And then there's also now the last few times they've actually had a monitoring plane. Not sure who that is. Might have been probably from a security standpoint that pretty much rotates around the stadium the whole time, not after the game starts, usually when the banners take off. So
Yeah, it's actually a TV
the TV
airplane. Yeah, it's got some fancy camera system on a 182 or something. It's actually an old, it's a small single engine plane. And if you looked at its track and flight aware, it was going around the stadium about 200 laps during the game.
Yep, for sure.
Very
Okay.
good. Thank you. I appreciate the information.
Noise abatement, nothing else in there. Okay, so on to new business. And the first item on new business was the in-person committee meetings note from the city.
Well, I provided just a short memo to the committee in your packet. You know, basically the city council has approved. So or advisory committees for the city, basically, since the emergency, the state or federal emergency ended with the pandemic, they made a determination that basically advisory type committees would continue to meet remotely as opposed to in person. I think they've probably gotten some pushback on that from some committees who want to get back in person. So what they've done is they approved a policy allowing boards and commissions that are remote, if the board or commission chooses, that they could have up to 4 meetings per calendar year in person. So in person obviously would require, if it's in person, it does require that the appointed membership of the committee would have to be in person. It wouldn't be a mix of some in person and some remotely. So if it's in person, it's in person. If it's remote, it's remote. So really the question is, especially next meeting, we're going to be talking about our schedule for 2024. The question, I guess, of the committee is there any interest in doing up to 4 meetings? So for us, that would be 4 of 6, because we only have 6 regular meetings anyways, but up to 4 of 6 regular meetings in person. These would be held back at the airport terminal in the lower level conference room like we have in the past. Some of you that are newer on the committee have never attended an in-person meeting. So I'm sure Mr. Perry and Mr. Ferris will tell you just what a raucous environment they are and what a damn fine good time.
Matt,
So really that's
could you
go
get
ahead, Matt.
clarification from the legal department on is the 4 chosen or designated for those committees and commissions that meet 12 months a year? Or in other words, 25% of your meetings have to be, you have to be in person, or is it also equally applied to any other that only meet every other meeting? In other words, 2/3 of the time.
The approval by council specifically said up to 4 meetings, and it didn't differentiate between the frequency of the meetings. So most of them meet monthly, or like us, every other month. But no, it didn't give a percentage or anything like that. It just gave a hard number, up to 4 meetings.
Okay.
So no action on that, but we think about it for the next.
Yeah, it's up to you guys. I mean, if you want to take action, you could, or if you want me, I can carry it over to new business, or we can discuss it when we set the schedule. The idea, because we have to publish our schedule of meetings, typically we publish that in December. If we're going to make a change, we'd have to publish, those meetings would have to be noted as in-person meetings. And so you don't need to make the decision tonight, but I guess if we're going to do it, my preference would be to make that decision by our November meeting. Not that we can't change that and republish if we decide to make a decision later, but it's easier when we do our initial publication at the beginning of the year or the end of this year.
One other point of clarification. For in person, does that mean the majority have to be in person, or can you have a hybrid where it's attendance both hybrid and in person?
Yeah, so for appointed officials, so for you appointed individuals of the committee, they would all have to be in person. There wouldn't be a mix of, Nell could participate by phone and Mark would have to be there. It would have to be, if Nell couldn't make the meeting in person, then it would be an absence. But not a mix of the two is the instruction I got.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, when Matt had first and we can move this to talk later, I was thinking, I don't know if I guess the January meeting is our change for voting for chair and vice chair. That meeting would be in person, or if we just picked one, or we just stay remote. for the whole thing.
So, go ahead, Nell.
It feels like we'd have some attendance fallout if we did in person, whereas remote, it's just easy for everybody to be here.
Yeah.
Yeah, to take a hard line on if you're not there physically or not able to attend might, I don't know, unless we're happy with losing 10%. I don't know. It just seems like there's gonna be a little bit of fallout if we go that route, but I'm happy to go either way. I'm happy to shake everybody's hand and the raucous environment.
It's not that great, but you're right. I think it's easy to be able to, all you got to be able to find a computer to participate in the meeting if you're on the road and those type of things. You know, the pushback on that are the 6 or 7 people that are attending the meeting via telephone here, from the public's perspective. You know, it also makes it less, I mean, they can't see us, they can't, they're not, unless they've downloaded the packets, they're not seeing the information that's being presented and those type of things. So that's the other side of it, is the interaction with the people that would attend the meeting. So again, no need to make a decision on it tonight. Kick it around, and we'll address it when we have the meeting, the 2024 meeting schedule. We'll have our dates put together, and then we can make a determination at our next meeting when we approve the schedule, if some or any of those are going to be in-person meetings.
Excellent. The next on new business. I scroll to go find where I was. Is the update on airport rules and regulations, Matt?
Yeah, second, just making a note here.
No worries.
I didn't provide you guys anything on this. This is just something we want to get started. So our airport rules and regulations were last updated by the committee on 10 years ago, July of 13. So it's been quite a while. I was looking to see if the committee would consider seeing if we have a couple, 2 to 3 members that would be interested in working on a review and update, just refreshing them. One of the things, a couple of things that I would state in there. One of this does come out of the what I mentioned earlier, which was the FAA's discussion about doing airport inspections for hangars and making sure the hangars are being used for the FAA grant assurances. So right now we've used, basically, if you have a registered aircraft, a tail number, an N number for it, that's fine. But sometimes those tail numbers get pretty old and out of date. So one of the things we would take a look at is what is our rules and regulations on that? Does that need to be updated? And talk about that. Some of the other things we get pushback on are, again, the use of off-airfield contractors working in the airport, those type of things. So we want to be cognizant that we have a kind of a direction, and that our policy, our rules and regulations back up the direction that we want to go in. So, and then again, it's 10 years old. It just needs probably a general refresher anyways. So what I would be asking is if the committee would be interested in putting a subcommittee together with maybe 2 to 3 members to work with me on doing a review and preparing changes to present back to the committee at a later date.
Question, Matt. I'm not quite clear. Are you looking to harmonize the rules with our airport culture, or are you looking for more enforcement of the existing rules? What kinds of efforts and changes are you? It wasn't clear to me where you were headed with that.
Yeah, I think specifically on the hangar activity, I'm looking to. I don't think what I would say is our current culture is probably consistent with what the FAA would be expecting for hangar activity. And I want to put the airport in a better position to take a look at those. Obviously, we've got a lot of people on hangar waiting lists, and if we've got aircraft that have been sitting there for a decade and haven't flown, you know, yeah, that's putting money in the airport coffer every month, but you know, it's not doing a lot for active aviation and those type of things and people that want to be flying here. So I would say, you know, in that one specifically, Fred, probably updating to get more in line with FAA inspection and put us in a position with what we decide is appropriate to be able to make sure we have the rules and regulations behind us to enforce that.
Right.
In general, again, overall looking for just a refresh look and those type of things. And if everything was fine and we just say, hey, we've reviewed it, everything looks good, we're gonna, you know, readopt it with an updated date and those type of things, that's fine as well. But part of it is getting a feel from some members on, you know, where do we think we want to go. We do have some deficiencies in it, you know, I know that times change, and you know, we need to keep up with it a little bit. So I don't know if that answered your question or not, Fred.
Yeah, that helps. I'd be happy to participate in that if you want.
Thank you.
I would also like to
I'm
be,
looking at my, my work papers.
Yeah.
The last time we wrote this thing, it was, July 17th, 2013.
13, yeah.
I still have the original file.
decade.
Were you on? You
I'll
were
join
probably
you.
on, weren't you?
What's that?
You were probably on, weren't you? Committee in 13?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Now you said you're interested as well?
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
please.
I'll do it
Okay.
again.
So that is perfect. I'll got Fred, Mark, and Nell. I will. I'll get the original document out. Mark's already got his, but I'll get copies of you out, and then we'll sit down and figure out kind of what we look to accomplish. And we can do it via Teams, I would say. But I'll reach out to you guys in the next couple of weeks to get things rolling. Thank you.
Need a motion on any of that, Matt, or we're just good, just set up the committee and go from there?
I think we're fine as a subcommittee.
Excellent. Thanks, you guys, for doing it. And the only one I throw in there is, let's look at abandoned car as our regulations.
Oh, yeah.
Make sure that's all.
I think that's addressed already, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's probably just reviewing it, just making sure what we have and what we can.
I got to spend a little time with Matt on that one, just for how we actually enforce that and what we can do on technically private property from the township's perspective, I'm guessing, but within their jurisdiction. So
It's rule 4.15.
yeah.
Not that
For one thing,
not that this useless information is in my head.
that's rules are a different for process. Okay, that's all I had on that. And again, I appreciate the offers from the three members.
Okay, next one, F3, the draft of the capital improvement plan. I think you sent that out right before or this afternoon.
Yeah, and actually I'll throw it up. I'm going to share my screen for you members that are here, in case you didn't get a chance to look at it. And it's a lot of information on a small screen. So are you guys seeing my screen now? A spreadsheet?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Can't share and talk.
If you're talking, we can't hear you.
Haha. Did I lose you?
Hello, for the meeting.
Yes, we're still all good.
Give me 1 second. I'm booting back up here again. Let's see if I can get back in. I'll let you know here in a second.
I got you on speaker, so in case anybody actually could hear you.
to screen share or what, but my computer literally just shut down, but it's coming back up here.
These will be the technical issues we talk about.
Luckily, you mentioned the technical difficulties
Yes.
section of the, I can't reopen the Zoom. Well, that one's a first.
Matt's reconnecting, she'll be here in just a second.
I hope.
He helps.
Join my computer on here. Video. All right, do you guys hear me and see me again?
You're back.
I apologize. I'm not going to go back to the screen share because as soon as I went to that, literally my computer shut off. So, not just dropped Zoom, but completely shut off. So each year, many of you will be familiar with this. Each year we do an airport capital improvement plan. It's one of the requirements that we have by the FAA and MDOT Aeronautics for projects at the airport. These are projects that the city also has a capital improvement process that we go through, that all departments in the city go through. And these projects are typically different. What we include in the FAA projects are only projects that are eligible for federal and state funding. So we work every year with our consultant to look at the projects that are on our list, update the costs associated with them, update all sorts of things on them, and then and then that gets submitted to the state. We have what's called a MAP meeting, a Michigan Aeronautics Plan meeting, and then review those things. And this, once everything is done and wrapped up, changes may be made based on what the state has to say. That gets submitted. That's a final document that gets submitted to the state, and then the state, because they're an FAA block grant state with the federal government, they put all the projects together in one submittal to the FAA. So these projects, if you've sat through this presentation before, you'll see pretty much most of the things are continuations, obviously from previous years. So I'll just go through on a summary. Last year I was able to provide more detail on those. Unfortunately, our engineer who's working on these was not able to get all that detail. They got the draft to me today. I reviewed it, but they weren't able to get all the final changes back in time for this meeting. So the projects that we're proposing in 2024, the first two actually there, which say extend runway, EA amendment number 1 and 2, these actually are, the language on that will change a little bit. These are actually reimbursements. So as part of the EA process, the airport has a reimbursement agreement with the FAA, and we make payments. We've had to make payments to them for their review of our EA documents. At the end of the project, those funds that we've paid out are reimbursable to the airport through the AIP grant program. And so what you'll see here is the last couple of amendments, or the 2 amendments that we've done to the original agreement. We've actually already been reimbursed for the original agreement. These are 2 amendments, and we would, once those amendments are closed out and stuff, we would be seeking for reimbursement. So those first 2 are actually just reimbursing funds that we've already paid out of our airport coffers. The next 3 items under 2024, they're all design items for the runway extension project. The way the FAA has you break out basically concrete work, lighting work, and in this case, a new PAPI. We've been trying to replace the VASI, which is a navigation aid at the runway 24 end. It's very outdated technology. It's tough to get parts for. And so we've been wanting to put a PAPI in at that end of the runway. And so that would be included in this project if the project moves forward. And we do have a PAPI on the runway 6 end already. So these basically those three projects, the last group of three projects under development year 2024 are all just design and engineering. Then in 2025 are the actual construction. And again, the three different items are broken out: construction of the actual physical construction, the lighting and signage, and the PAPI. Those are all proposed for 2025. But again, all three of those are the same project. In 2026, we are looking to start the design to reconstruct Taxiway A, Taxiway Alpha. We've talked obviously about this because of the concrete cancer issues that we've had there and some of the deterioration that we needed to move forward on getting Alpha reconstructed. It's not a situation with the concrete cancer. It's not a situation where we can just do an overlay or those type of things. So it would be a full reconstruction. Now, depending on available funds, we may have to segment that, do it over a couple of phases. But from the planning and design point, at this point, we're going to move forward with it in 2026. So again, those two items in 2026, they're both engineering and design. But again, the first item is for the actual physical work, and the second item is for lighting and signage. Moving forward into development year 27, that would actually be the reconstruction, the physical reconstruction of Taxiway Alpha. And even though this says Taxiway Alpha, it also includes Taxiway Bravo. I've had that'll be updated on the final submittal to MDOT. Basically the concrete taxiway, Alpha and Bravo. So 2027 would actually be the actual construction of those that project. 2028 would the same year we would both do design and construction to do repairs on. Actually, we wouldn't if we move forward with the project in 27 for reconstructing Alpha and Bravo. The project in 28 would just be rehabilitating Taxiway Charlie. This would not be a full reconstruction. This would be spot repairs, some full depth repairs on bad joints, sealing, those type of things, various things to continue the life of that busy taxiway. So that whole project, it's a smaller project. That whole project would happen in 2028. 2029 would be engineering for replacing Airport Drive, coming in from Ellsworth Road to Airport Boulevard, coming in from Ellsworth Road to Airport Drive. The road, we put a thin coat surface on it. It's actually maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and it's held up a lot better than I thought. So we've been able to push this project back a little bit. But the idea of that project is, as a full reconstruction, including drainage improvements and a sidewalk for a little safer mobility, so people aren't walking down the road, especially with all the soccer activity we have there. So that would be a full reconstruction of Airport Boulevard, entering in again from Ellsworth down to Airport Drive. So design of that project would occur in 2029 with construction in 2030. Then getting really crazy in 2030, we would start looking at the design for reconstruction of the existing runway 624. Again, that runway is at that time, that runway will be 30 years old since we did the concrete cap. While it's not deteriorating at the rate of Taxiway Alpha, it is showing signs of deterioration. We do see the signs of ASR, the concrete cancer, in that same in the white cap of the runway, but it is higher rated better rated and better condition than the taxiway Alpha. So again, it's kind of long-term planning to replace 624 and then that was so design work in 2030, and then in 2031 we would do reconstruction, the actual construction of the runway, and we're also showing another small problem, or a small project, just doing some ramp repair, apron repair. This would be the other half of the terminal ramp. We did part of it a couple of years ago. We did like a slurry seal on that, but we didn't do the rest of the ramp. And so this project in 2031 would be that work as well. You can see lots of money, dollars there that it's going to cost. There's a lot of different money out there right now, and you know the feds and the state also, they carry large chunks of discretionary funds that they use for larger projects. So we get our entitlement fund, which is about $150,000 a year, and then we're also currently receiving some bill funding, BIL. I forgot what it stands for. It's one of the federal programs, Basic Infrastructure Law or something like that, that provided additional fundings to airports. That's just under $300,000 a year, and I think we receive that for 5 years. So that'll provide some additional funding. Most of the mixes are really screwy, especially when you add in bill money and those things. Traditionally, the funding has been 90% federal, 5% state, and 5% local for these projects. So I'll open it up to questions that you may have on the proposed draft CIP.
Matt, on the, I see the taxiways Alpha and Bravo and Charlie are being addressed. I don't see anything in there for Delta.
No, Delta is, because its pavement condition is on par with the other parts, and there's kind of two things going with Delta. So if the runway project goes, much of Delta is going to actually be relocated because of the shift. So that actually, a lot of Delta will be new, and you know, the remaining part isn't significant, and you know, if the conditions warrant it, but because of the lower volume of traffic on Delta, you know, when we're prioritizing pavements, that one's going to fall a little farther behind.
We talked a little bit about navigational aids, VASI versus PAPI, and you know, I support that. One thing we haven't talked about is old school technology beacons and the amount of energy those things gobble up. Any thought about
replacing the beacon?
Yeah.
You know, that's a good point, Mark. We have not, I've not explored that at all. We've actually, just to give you an idea, the beacon, one of the problems we just dealt with, the beacon is actually controlled by the tower, as it should be, but it actually is controlled by an old telephone line, a POTS, plain old telephone line, an old copper line. And we actually had a problem with that with AT&T recently, and it took them old school to figure out how to fix it. So for those who were at the airport, probably saw the beacon running a lot more than it normally would, and running when it wasn't off. But I've not explored, Mark, to see even in the existing tower if there's opportunity to change that over to LED lighting. So it's a good one to consider. And actually, if we're just changing out the beacon head itself, it may actually be a very manageable project. The big thing is, and I'm sure they do, but the big thing is making sure FAA has an approved standard for an LED light for the beacon.
Okay.
Other questions?
Excellent. Thanks, Matt.
Necessary on this, Mr. Chair. You know, it's just, wanted to update you on kind of what we're taking to the, state. We'll be up there in October, for the, map meeting and getting this submitted here, pretty soon, so.
I have one other observation, and Matt Harshberger, you may want to weigh in on this. Years ago, before the security perimeter fencing went up, there was an access road from your fire station directly to the airport, rather than going out to Ellsworth, down Airport Drive. Is that something that you would want to explore, is a direct access road?
Yeah, absolutely. Any way that we can shorten that response time. I mean, if we have an access directly from the back of our property right into the airport, that would be great if we were able to make that happen again. So it would save probably 3-5 minutes, if that, to get where we need to be on the airport property.
I'm just looking at the AFD here, or the airport diagram, and I'm just thinking all these things, and it's like, all right.
If it's
Yeah, I'd
not,
have to take a look at that, because I'm trying to think, I gotta think where your property boundary comes over to, Matt, because I think right now, I'm not sure if the back of your property lines up with the existing fence or not. And either if,
yeah, I'd have to go look again on exactly
Yeah.
where it lines up. I agree. It's behind the hangars, I believe, back there, but
Yeah, the remnants of the 2-track is still there.
Yeah.
What side of the fence does it come into?
yeah, so I'm just trying to think from a gate perspective, you know, we probably still, we still have, and then the other, and then at that point, again, from a time perspective, you'd access basically up by Alpha 1 onto the airport there. So
Yeah.
something we can take a look at. I'll look at the maps and see if there's some opportunities there.
that'd be great. Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Anything else on the AFE?
Okay, I think the one item we had at the beginning to the end of the agenda, which was on, it was mostly about geese. I think now you brought up that some people ask about it.
Mark mentioned wildlife mitigation, I think you mentioned, Mark.
Yep.
Yeah, well, my thought was, and Nell sort of sparked my mind on this. You know, I know we have somewhat of an informal wildlife mitigation program in place that the airport works with, not just only the other city departments, but also Matt's department, Matt Harshberger's department. And while we're looking at freshening up airport rules and other things, now might be the time to take a refresher look at the mitigation program in place. And we heard from Mr. McCall earlier today, earlier in this meeting, their willingness to participate to some degree. Now, I understand, Matt, that the city it's a highly regulated program that they have in place, so it may preclude those that aren't properly certified. So, but anyway, just generally speaking, take a look at it, refresher. You know, is there any coordination that needs to be happened with Matt's department or Matt Harshberger's department, or any of the wildlife departments or whatever? So I throw that out there, and now you can take over and jump in.
We just had some discussion over the farming and the decision with the deer attractants and things like that. And it was hangar talk with about 10 people. From northwest tees, northeast tees, and the southeast tees. And it moved to, okay, that is, you know, one type of wildlife, but it expanded into, we don't want to exchange that for some, and I know we kind of touched on it in these meetings for the advisory committee. If we get predatory birds, and I know we can cut the grasses to different lengths, Matt has taken the time to help me understand a lot more details about it than maybe I should have been a better listener. But there's, you know, tricks with the grass, and now what do we do with the grass? What do we plant instead? And the big thing was the geese. The geese, you know, because they can get you in the air, and I know that recently somebody almost flipped their airplane because of them. I know I came back from a trip just this weekend, and there was a ton of them. So I've run into them a few times. I don't know if it's seasonal, or I don't know what's been done in the past, but it's definitely a hot topic because now these things can get you in the air and on the ground.
Maybe I'll share a little bit about what we do for, you know, mitigate or for addressing wildlife. We have a couple of things that we do. So for, you know, for deer, for a number of years, we've allowed a handful of local hunters, archery only in season, to hunt at the airport. Again, archery only and in season. They would use their own deer permits and those type of things for that. We just allowed them access to the airport. They would have to report to us when they're in, you know, how long they're in, so on and so forth. And then obviously if they got any deer, we just wanted to be able to keep track of that. What we found was it was becoming difficult to manage somewhat with our existing staff, and we weren't seeing a lot of success out of it. And so we went out with to the USDA. We've been out to the USDA a couple of times now to have them just come in when we feel the population inside the fence is getting a little larger. This last time they were in, they found, so they come in, we hire them, we get a call permit from the state to come in. They actually come in over a couple of different days. They come out, they set up wildlife cameras at various points throughout the airport, so they can, using thermal imaging, so they can see the number of animals, the number of deer particularly is what they're looking for. But they'll also, if they see other, you know, if they see coyotes or those type of things, they have the ability under their permit to address those as well. So they'll come out and they'll monitor that activity for a few days to see what's there, what they're expecting, and then they'll come out over 1 or 2 nights. We typically would notify Matt's department, just letting them know that we've got a hunt going out there. These are certified sharpshooters using clear infrared imaging night stuff. They do a phenomenal job. For us, one of the advantages is dealing with the state requirements of a call permit, and those include removing the heads of any deer that are shot, taking them over to Grass Lake DNR office for testing. Everything has to be, all the meat is donated to nonprofits, and the USDA handles all of that as part of their process. This last time they were in, which was just a few months ago, they had identified 8 deer, and they over 2 nights they got 7 of the 8. I couldn't find that last one, and previous time before that they took, I think, about 13 or 14 deer out. So we've been managing that way. You know, the inspection that they did, I mean, the USDA, the FAA has a, you know, their deer-proof fence is 12 foot tall with razor wire on top of it, extending in both directions, and basically angled fencing dug into the ground on the outside of the vertical fence to keep them from boring under. So we've got some 10-foot fencing. We've got the short fencing up in the populated area along the terminal building. So making the entire airport deer-proof would be very expensive and very difficult, and to be honest with you, from the welcome to Ann Arbor perspective up by the terminal, not real attractive. And airport are gonna, and so deer get in, over, around, through the fence that we have. I've had multiple calls where deer are coming in. So I'll get a call from somebody because my phone number is when you come through the gates, if the gate doesn't close, call this number. That ends up to me. So I've had more than a few calls saying, hey, a deer just came through the gate. What do I do? Have a safe flight and let the gate close and have a safe flight. But I mean, I can't have them trying to chase the deer back out, those things. We also do other things we've done in the past. We've done, some herding to try to herd them out gates and those type of things. So a variety of things on the deer. Geese, not as much in the geese as opposed to just dealing with the geese when they're on the ground. So we use a variety of things. We use bird bangers are probably the most common thing. Obviously this time of year, geese are starting to migrate. So I think it is a little heavier now. Plus crops are out. So they're trying to get any straggling stuff that's on the ground. Don't really do hunting of geese, so that would be an option. We do have some issues with turkeys throughout the year. We look at dealing with those. Same type of things if they're in the vicinity of the airport, and we'll get a call from the tower saying, hey, we've got, turkey at the end of the runway or something like that. They'll go out, chase the wildlife off, use bird bangers. We also use during turkey season, we also allow archery hunting at the airport. Again, a select number of hunters that come in for turkey hunting for using archery only. So those are the big, those are the larger animals, and those are some of the mitigation activities that how we deal with those animals now.
Yeah, we added the item. I don't know if we had an outcome we were looking for, or just kind of a refresher on the mitigation. Probably is good. Okay.
I did have one. Sorry, thanks, guys. I did have one question, or I just wanted to refresh. The geese, were geese considered to be attracted more by crops than by the natural area? Like we worried about birds of prey for more of the field, but for crops, is that attracting geese, or is that kind of either way? Without
geese are attracted almost anywhere, it seems like, but we see a fair amount of them, and the Broadview Farms does a great job of, once they're harvesting, of tilling that soil over and those type of things. So this is in no way meant to disparage what they're doing, but the reality is there's always feedstock and those type of things around. So they come in and they search for that stuff. Again, this time of year, you're going to just get more migration as well as the weather turns. But if there's lots of bodies of water around us, detention basins and those type of things. I mean, you pull out of Costco over by the on the bank side, the Ann Arbor Bank out of Costco, and that area there is just always packed full of geese, that pond and stuff like that. So a lot of it is just the environment around the airport, and then of course the airport provides an environment for them, and geese are a big concern. One of the things we've been talking with the USDA as we take this land out of ag production, is they're developing or grasses are being developed. They specifically we're looking at I'm going to get this wrong, an endophytic tall fescue, I think is pretty close to what it's called. That actually is, geese do not like that grass, and so it's being used at some other airports. It's something that they're doing a lot of exploration on to see how successful it is. But it's one of the things that we're looking at as, when we plant these acres back with a natural product or a natural substance, is looking at that grass that is not attractive to geese. They don't like it. They don't like eating it. They don't like the feel of it. But as Nell mentioned, one of the bigger things, and this is, is you've got to worry grass height becomes an issue because of birds of prey. So if all of a sudden your grass is cut really low and you got a bunch of field mice running around out there, that's going to draw the hawks and the owls and those type of things. So there's recommendations that airports and the USDA have worked on a certain height that you keep the grass that low enough that it doesn't attract the larger mammals or coyotes and those type of things, but is high enough that it gives protective cover to the rodents, to the mice and voles and those type of things that don't make it as easy for the birds of prey. Doesn't draw the birds of prey as much. So it's definitely a blend. I mean, it's not gonna, this solution isn't reducing the ag isn't gonna eliminate wildlife from inside the fence area. The idea is to reduce it and make it easier to control. And again, every amount we reduce is increasing or reducing the risk of an accident with an aircraft. So I'm not going to sit here and say we're not going to find deer in the airport because we don't have ag in there. I don't expect that at all. But I think we'll reduce the attractants for that.
One of the things that we did about 10 years ago, or maybe longer, is we engaged with the city's
ornithologist.
We engaged her to come out and give us a study and recommendation on grasslands and how to maintain that. And one of the recommendations is keep the corn. Why? Because geese are big and they've got a wide wingspan and they can't land efficiently in tall rows of corn. And the other thing they said is let's cultivate your grasslands so that we have small grassland birds. And I think the program is still in effect, although the corn, that's a cash crop, and depending on the price of corn, so.
And the USDA report, the first thing they say is don't put in corn.
Exactly.
put in soybeans for the larger mammals, the deer and those type of things. So yeah, it's a tough balance, and again, it's going to be kind of playing with it as we go to figure out what's the best solution.
So thanks for the thoughtful discussion and for the creative solutions there. But no, I get it. It's multifaceted to say the least.
Yeah.
I think the only desired outcome from the airport tenants that I was talking to is that we don't trade one for the other, and that geese are included in the mitigation, which it sounds like they are.
Yeah, the idea, the hope is to deal with the geese using the type of grass that we plant, the endophytic tall fescue, if I'm pronouncing that right. And then the height, so kind of a three-phased approach. The height of the grass helps control the birds of prey. The type of grass helps impact the geese, and the fact that we've planted grass as opposed to the tillage crops will hopefully deal with the larger mammals, primarily the deer. And Fred, sorry I kept you out there for a while. I didn't see that you were still on the trying to get in list.
Yeah, no, I had a technical problem. I think it's my home Wi-Fi, and so I've been in and out for a while, but you guys are all looking good now.
Excellent. Okay, thanks for that update on the mitigation. I know that working on this on another airport, we were told that airports, to us are airports, but to animals, they look like these big, beautiful parks. And so it's hard to keep them from wanting to hang out there. Next, let's talk about items for the next agenda. Do we have any items, anything we should bring up?
So I'm going to scratch off the geese for the next item, if that's okay with you, Nell. Okay. Right now, the only thing I have on the schedule would be, setting our 2024 meeting schedule, which we normally do in November.
Do we feel should we add something on the subcommittee report back? I don't know if we really think we're gonna be able to talk very much before November.
Let's see what kind of progress we make first, and if we're ready to get something back to the committee, we'll do it. If not, we'll just give an update report on what actions, what progress we've made.
Excellent. Anything from any members think of? Of course, we can change it. Items for next. Okay. So our next schedule may be Wednesday, November 15th, 5:15. Give Matt a call. If you're not going to be able to attend, just helps us get to know. Okay, let's go back in. If there are any public comments, we leave this space at the end, much like we did at the beginning. Allows persons to speak up to 3 minutes. If you do *9 on your phone, that'll raise your hand, and then Matt will be able to call you up at the last 3 digits of your phone number. If there's any comments.
I'm not seeing any hands raised at this point, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. With that said, then I look for a motion for adjournment for this meeting tonight.
Move to adjourn.
Move to adjourn by Mark. Look for a second. If I could second, can ask and second. All in favor of adjourning this evening, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposed? Good. Yeah, I was raising my hand, but I didn't oppose. Okay, then this meeting is so adjourned. We'll see you November 15th. And Chris, thanks for showing up. I know you run into a lot of stuff. I appreciate it.
No, thanks so much. No, I was running from a community event, but that had been rescheduled twice. But thank you guys. I'm glad to be part of this. All right.
Okay.
Thanks, Rob.
November.
Okay.
Another fine meeting, Mr. Chair. Did a great job.
Back at you, boss.
All right. You have a good night.
See ya.
Bye-bye.